All right, what's up, 42 Strong? Coming at you with another episode. Me and Andy are here ready to talk through. We just got through with our in-body week. We're about to get into week 4 of the challenge, so we're on the back end. So this is where a lot of things start to, everything that's gotten hard is going to get a little bit harder just because we're about that halfway point. So we did in-bodies this week, so me and Andy were thinking we probably want to talk through because there's always a bunch of questions around the in-body. And it always kind of starts with the expectations versus reality.
Yep.
And we touched on the last episode, but in case there's a few people that didn't hear the last episode, you think you want to go through real quick about what a good expectation for overall sustainable weight loss, fat loss, stuff like that is for anyone that may not have caught the last episode?
Yep, I think this is important to keep hammering home because even though we talked about this in the orientation, we've made a couple content pieces about it, we've mentioned it on the podcast. Ironically today, or not today, the other day, I want to say it was Thursday, I come in the morning and I was talking to a member who had just done their in-body, and I asked, well, how'd it go? And they had lost about 5 pounds, I believe is what they said, 5 or 6 pounds. And I could almost sense the disappointment on their face. And I said, that's fantastic. And I wanted to remind them in that moment, like, remember, the fastest way to sustainable weight loss is a ½ pound to 1 pound a week. So if you have already lost 5 or 6 pounds and you're only 3 to 4 weeks into this thing, you are winning. You are ahead of the game. So if your expectation was to lose 20 pounds, that's unfair.
Yeah.
That's unfair. And in fact, I talked to a member, a male member of ours, over the week, and he has done the challenge before. In the first challenge, he lost about 20 some pounds. And the weight loss is coming off a little slower this time. But what he was happy about, and he said he talked to you about, was that he's lost no skeletal muscle and he even gained a little bit of skeletal muscle. So crash diets, you lose more than fat. You lose water and you often lose muscle. And dieting and losing muscle is completely pointless. And it creates this cascading effect where now, because you're losing muscle, your metabolic rate slows down. So you have to keep eating less and less and less. And
I think that's a big point to hammer home.
It's how people end up skinny fat.
Yeah.
And everybody that you talk to wants a lean, toned body. But in pursuit of that, and I would say this is more with women than men, just because I think women have different ideas of the optimal body shape. Like most dudes just want to be jacked, But women have different ideas of how that looks. And in pursuit of that, they will crash diet, lose a lot of muscle tissue, and then they can never attain the look that they want because they're always in the mindset of lose weight, lose weight, lose weight, lose weight. But the more muscle that you lose in pursuit of losing weight, the less toned your body will ever look. So maintaining muscle mass, losing weight at a rate of a ½ pound to 1 pound a week is the key to getting a toned and fit looking body.
Yeah. No, I dig that. And kind of with that, like your composition change is a big part of it too. Because I know there was 1 or 2 specifically that they either stayed the exact same weight or maybe went up a pound. I was like, well, let's look at this a little deeper. They went up 3 or 4 pounds of skeletal muscle, lost like 2 or 3% body fat. So do you want to run some people through like kind of the math of like how much they're probably actually, like, we may not know it off the top of our head, but.
Yeah, if we had a specific situation, the math is really easy, but this is the overarching point for people to take home, is that if you lose, say, 5 pounds of body fat and you gain back 3 to 4 pounds of muscle, the scale is only going to show 1 to 2 pounds down. But your body fat percentage will certainly have gone down, and you've lost more body fat than you think because of that. And this is why the scale in and of itself is such a poor marker. It does not tell the whole story. You have to look at your body fat percentage, you have to look at the fat mass, and you have to look at the skeletal muscle mass. All of those things lead you towards an optimal body composition as opposed to just losing weight.
So that being said, when you look at these in-bodies, if you have questions, you're just like, this just doesn't seem right, please talk to us. I really hope that everyone that did their in-body this week is either planning a talk with their coach or has already talked with their coach. Because again, if you haven't done these challenges with us before, have never done an in-body, have only done a few, a lot of that stuff's going to be confusing.
Yep.
And we know most people are fixated on one number on the scale, and that's a good way to kind of show them, hey, good things are happening, even if that one number that you pay attention to isn't moving the punch.
And if you remember, like really, this is important so we can objectively show you the results from your efforts. But if you're unhappy with your in-body, I want you to ask yourself, take a look in the mirror, have you nailed these 5 things every day? Because if you've nailed these 5 things every day and you're still unhappy with the result, it probably is that your expectations are a little misaligned with actually what's best for you. Not even reality, like what's literally best for you. But if you're unhappy with your in-body and you look yourself in the mirror and you're like, you know what? Only a couple days out of the week I'm hitting 10,000 steps. Only 3 days out of the week I actually hit all the meals exactly right. I'm not preparing meals the way that I did in week 1 and 2. I'm starting to fall off. Like, these are great checkpoints for you.
Yeah.
So don't run from the results either. Like, there's a difference between misunderstanding your results and not taking accountability for them.
Yes.
And
it kind of goes to what we talked about in the last episode about when you do your check-in message. Instead of just blindlessly doing yes, no, no, yes, no, okay, I'll talk to you tomorrow about it. How about we do that quick little reflection? Okay, I answered no. Why? Why didn't I hit it today? What adjustment am I going to make tomorrow? Instead of just blindlessly saying, I just didn't hit it today. Hopefully I get it tomorrow.
Or the other thing is this. So when we only go surface layer deep with why something didn't happen. So it's like, why didn't I get my 10,000 steps in? Well, my kid had a basketball practice. Well, that in and of itself is not the reason why.
What would you say for that person?
For that person, hopefully nobody's turned in this specific example. I just pulled that out of the ether. But so what I would say in that case is the way to answer that question is, I wasn't prepared for the fact that my normal schedule was going to get disrupted in the evening because I had to take my kid to a basketball practice. What I probably could have done a better job of is after I dropped him off, gone and walked around the building or something like that. Walk around the gym. A lot of those gyms
have the little upper part that you can walk around.
Or even then, like, if I had been aware that I had this basketball practice the night before, I could have built some more walking time into my morning. Mm-hmm. I could have walked after my meals if that's something I hadn't done. But if you just use, I don't want to say the excuse, but if you just use the surface level reason why you chose not to do these things, you can often feel like that's a very good reason. And I always say human beings, I'm always amazed, we are capable of infinite rationalization. We can rationalize any choice and decision to protect ourselves from going, I didn't do what I committed to do. Mm-hmm. And I was going to talk about this in a content piece, so I'll just get it out here because I've talked about this before and it's been helpful. If you're new to the challenge, one of the things I talk about is the frame of the parent. And if you can take yourself out of your body, okay, and just be the parent and pretend like you are parenting yourself, or that for a moment you are your own child, and your child came to you and said, I didn't do this for this reason. Would you just let them off the hook if you knew like they could have done a better job, they had the resources to do a better job, but they chose not to do something that would actually make them a better version of themselves? Would you just be like, don't worry about it, it's no big deal?
Yeah.
Or would you coach them to learn from that mistake, to overcome that obstacle, to make a better decision next time? And if you can look at yourself in that way, if you can use the frame of the parent, you can often psychologically hack your way out of trying to avoid the pain of self-judgment. Because I think the reason why a lot of people don't confront their own mistakes and the things that they don't do that they truly want to do is because they're trying to avoid the pain of that self-judgment. So just understand, you're a human. Mm-hmm. You're going to make mistakes. You need to be kind to yourself and compassionate when you do. But you don't need to avoid the reality of the fact that you could have made a better choice. Yeah. There was a better option. And I just think this is a lifetime thing. And this, I struggle with it. Everybody struggles with this to a degree.
Being human.
But your ability to go, oh, I see what I'm doing there. Mm-hmm. I'm letting myself off the hook instead of creating a better strategy. That's what keeps people trapped in these cycles and patterns. And then they will say things like diets don't work for me, or exercise. I just can't lose weight. Exercise never works. It's got to be my hormones. And it's like both of those things, could be true, but more often than not, you're focusing on something that you act like you don't have control over, and you do. Because if you want your hormones to function differently, there are dietary and lifestyle strategies that are required to do that. It's not always a medication fix or something along those lines.
Yeah, no, I dig that. And that kind of feeds us right into the next point that I wrote up, was the chaos of life. Because again, not every week is going to be like week one, where everything is just perfectly in line with everything. Like throughout weeks, people are going to get sick. Either you get sick, your kids get sick. So those are different struggles that life will throw at you that you got to find your ways around. Same with like your travel. I know there's 2 or 3 of my clients specifically that are traveling out of town this week. So we talked a lot this week. All right, what's the game plan? What's the hotel gym looking like? What's near where you're staying so you can look at your food? Like we've talked a lot about checking out beforehand about where your Whole Foods is and stuff like that, so you can prep. Do you want to dive into one of those specifically, or do you have another one in your head?
We can talk about all those, but here's the bigger thing, because I hear this a lot from people. They will, like if they're about to sign up at the gym or when we're launching the challenge, I always hear like, just life is really chaotic right now. I don't know if I've got the time and ability to do it. But I want you to think about how kind of absurd that perspective is. Because what you're literally saying up front is that when life gets difficult or it's not perfect for me, I am unable to commit to exercising and changing the way I eat. So I'm waiting for this perceived time that is often incredibly subjective, where things are going to be perfect enough for me to feel good about stepping into this challenge. And you may actually find one of those pockets in life, right? You may find that at some point in time where like your kid's sports calm down, or maybe you don't have as much travel for work. Maybe it's not flu season, right?
But those don't typically last the entire year.
Right. What you're literally guaranteeing is when those obstacles show up, now you won't be able to do it again.
On a prayer.
Yes.
Like, all right, when will my schedule calm down? Please,
that's exactly right. It's like that just does not work. What you have to learn is the obstacle is the way, right? So right now, while life is chaotic, if you jump into a challenge, you are now forced to figure it out. And you have choice. You either do it or you don't. But assuming that at some point in time, all the stars will align, and that will be the thing that allows you to do this, is incorrect. And there's absolutely zero evidence in anyone's listening's lives that works. Because otherwise, you'd be where you want to be.
Yeah. And that kind of makes me think a lot of the people that are struggling, it's hard for me to get my water and my steps in. It kind of comes back to, like, I got to be different. I got to make some changes.
Yeah, well, we know it's hard for you, but like you have to approach it in a different way.
Because you don't find time, you make it.
That's right.
And if you're going through your day trying to find time for that 10,000 steps, like you may not find it. Like you have to create it. Same with your exercise and everything in between.
I sent an email out earlier this week, and I got some feedback from it that people appreciated it, because there's this idea that we can somehow manage our time, and we cannot. Okay, we can only manage ourselves and how we use the time, and you have choice. And this is something that a lot of people act like they don't, or I don't even say act. This is something that people believe they don't have as much control over as they do. But there are hard decisions at times and hard conversations that have to be had.
Yeah. And when in doubt, if you don't know where to go with that, I know a gym with a lot of coaches that are
we'd love to help you with this stuff.
You just got to ask for help when you need help. All right. Like I said in my video earlier in the week, don't suffer in silence. Like the whole point of this, you have help. So let's make sure we ask for it.
If you want to go like the 2 specific ones, like people being sick and traveling a lot for work, and then I think we collected another one about boredom snacking. But like if we're talking about being sick, here's the deal. If you are really, really sick, one of the best things that you can do is continue to walk and continue to move. And I'm telling you right now, unless you are deathly ill, you could certainly do one of those at-home workouts as well. it would not be such a subtraction of your energy that it would make you more sick. However, not moving at all, laying around all day, and then eating a bunch of comfort foods to make yourself feel better can certainly contribute to feeling and being sicker. So we have this idea of like when we're sick, we just shut it down, we don't do nothing, we lick our wounds until we feel better. Like there's nothing we can do to facilitate that. Well, here's the deal. Eating high quality foods like we recommend on this plan, walking, getting outside, hydrating, these are quite literally the foundations of overcoming sickness and illness. So if you get sick, double down. Again, I'm not saying crush it, go hard. I'm not even saying come in and lift weights if you're sick. But if you're dealing with the sniffles or something, like, hey, it's just back to work. That's the reality of life. And when it comes to travel, the thing about travel is, and I get, because I travel a lot, and it is hard for me to keep my routines together. But for me, the way I eat and the fact that I'm going to train, that doesn't change. Like those things I always have control over no matter where I am in the world. If I'm traveling, I can find a gym, I can use a hotel gym, I can do an at-home workout in my room. There are a whole lot of options to continue to train. When I travel, I often walk more, right? So I don't have a problem there, and I would suggest most people shouldn't unless you're locked in meetings all day. But that's probably the reality of your job when you're here too. So the same strategies that help you overcome that then will help you when you're traveling. And then this idea of boredom snacking. This is where I need you to just ask yourself, how long has this been a problem? And at what point in time am I willing to stop it? And no, it's not easy. Because boredom snacking literally says, I'm eating to change the way I feel right now. So maybe do something else that's more engaging. Because that feeling of wanting to snack is probably not going to go away. You have trained that into yourself by always snacking when you're bored. So the only way to really deal that is to switch the habit. We have to face the fact that this boredom snacking is not congruent with how we want to feel and how we want to look. Boredom snacking spikes blood sugar over and over throughout the day, which raises inflammation, which is the root of all disease. And boredom snacking is using food to change the way you feel. So if you can accept everything that I just said was true, I think you probably agree that that's not a strategy that you would recommend to your child or somebody that you love and care about. So if we access the frame of the parent again, it's like, would you ever advise somebody to do that? I'm not saying judge the person. I'm saying just look at the behavior. And please, if you're listening to this, I am not judging you. I'm talking specifically about these behaviors themselves. But you would never advise somebody to go grab a handful of chocolate because they're bored. You would never tell somebody that you loved and care about, just go eat a bunch of peanuts and M&Ms because you're bored. You would say, well, what do you think you could do right now? What other options might you have available to you that would alleviate your boredom, but also be more congruent with you being the healthiest and happiest version of yourself?
Do you have any specific tactics? Like say, all right, it's about 8:30 at night. I've already had my night meal. I'm kind of getting ready to do my bed routine, and I'm just sitting there watching TV, and that boredom snacking comes. What would you say in kind of that time frame and whatnot? What would be a useful tactic?
So this is
outside of
the exact example you just gave is actually a really good one. So here's what I would do. For me specifically, I've had to confront how important sleep is.
And I was going to go to that next.
Okay, because there's a whole lot of people that we talk about or talk to who struggle with sleep. It is not ironic that the majority of these people also struggle with late night snacking. Okay, I have struggled with this a large part of my life too. When I started to understand what was happening, I realized that late night snacking was causing my blood sugar to slowly rise as I was going to bed. My blood sugar would peak at about 2 a.m. It would then start to come down and down and down. And around 3 a.m., sometimes 4, I would pop out of bed like it was time to go to work. And forever, and still at times, I would like to blame this on the fact that I spent most of my life waking up at 3:45 a.m. But what I found out it was there's a physiological reason why that was happening. When you're asleep and your blood sugar goes down, your body will start to produce cortisol to wake you up because a blood sugar crash is not good for you if you're asleep. So it produces cortisol to wake you up. And now in that moment, you have disrupted your sleep, which is the key to mental, physical, and emotional recovery. Every day, your sleep and the quality of it is the key to your mental, physical, and emotional health. So by snacking, we've impacted our ability to recover in those areas. So if I use logic as a way to get myself out of this, every time I feel the desire to snack, I am going to remind myself that snacking before bed is not congruent with my nutrition plan and the goals I have for myself, and that it will disrupt my sleep. And the cost of that is me not feeling as good mentally, physically, and emotionally. So for me, that is very strong leverage to keep me from doing it 90% of the time. The 10% of the time that I still do that, I just deal with it. You know, it is what it is. But the next morning, I'm always have one of those moments where I look myself in the mirror and I'm like, man, you shouldn't have did that. Because I know it
Everybody
disrupted
has that
my
feeling.
sleep.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So that's how I would address that very specific example. But another thing, you know, like if it's during work, right? If you work on a computer a lot, I hear this from people. They'll be like, I just snack because I'm bored at work. And what it probably is you're attributing boredom to exhaustion, right? So you think you're bored, but you're really exhausted. When you're working on a computer and you're highly focused, your brain is burning through a lot of glucose. Glucose is the body and brain's main source of fuel. So as that dips, your ability to focus gets harder and you feel exhausted. When we feel exhausted, we have feelings of boredom. We grab a quick handful of whatever it is on our desk and throw it in our face. We get this little burst of energy and it can kind of like kickstart us back into things. So if that resonates with you, what I would tell you is instead of grabbing food, go get outside and go move. And if you work for somebody that won't let you get up from your desk and go walk outside for a couple minutes, I don't know what to tell you other than I'd probably just start doing push-ups or squats or something in my cubicle or jumping something, right? But I would suggest that most people are like, oh, I can't do that at work. I suggest if you actually went and talked to your employer, they probably wouldn't have as big of an issue with it as you think. Because if that's something that you're utilizing to help you then come be more productive, I don't know an employer who wouldn't be down for that. I think sometimes the courage to have that conversation is a little more challenging than a lot of people want it to be. But you have to engage your body in order to have energy. So if you feel bored and you're wanting food and it resonates with you, this could be a strategy for you to get some quick energy. You can do that simply by driving your heart rate up, you know, and also getting outside, getting your eyes on some sun is always helpful as well, even if it's overcast. So.
Yeah, and you've talked in previous podcasts about the time blocking.
Yeah.
Where it's like if you can start doing that, and again, like having a conversation with your employer, or if you work from home, like I'm willing to bet you can get up from your chair for 5 minutes.
100%.
I don't think anything drastic is going to happen in 5 minutes. I'm guaranteed there's different buckets of the day that you can work that stuff in.
For sure.
Anything else that you want to touch on that question-wise that we normally get around this time with the in-body?
I think the big point that we've talked about today that I want everybody to take away from this is this idea that the chaos of life is not going anywhere. You will deal with this for the rest of your life. And the way to overcome it is to go through it. You know, the obstacle is the way. We're asking you to try to be as close to perfect on this challenge as possible because there's something that happens when you do that. You start to confront your normal ways of dealing with things. And you can create better strategies that will keep you more aligned with the things that make you happy and feel your best if you don't give in to those things. But if you don't ever commit to a challenge like this, there's not enough leverage to change it. The narrative and the story of why it's so hard to do these things becomes the predominant voice in your head. So I want you to understand that the obstacle is the way. And if you can use that as a mantra, every time you don't want to do what you know is best for you and what you have committed to do, you'll get better at overcoming it. You just have to remind yourself that this is the path.
Some of the best lessons in life are learned through hardships and difficult times.
For sure.
You learn a lot because you're challenged in different ways, and when things are easy in the same routine, like that's how you're gonna get caught in that loop that we've been talking about. So
That's right.
And then kind of what I wanted to leave off with was kind of where you just took it was kind of giving people that good mental edge. Because when you get on the back end of the challenge, there's a lot of voices in your head that start telling you, this is too much, I got too much going on. You start trying to give yourself a lot of scapegoats. So you've already kind of touched on it. Anything else that you want to put into people's head, at least on the mental side of things? Because I know the voices start talking a little bit louder on this back end of the challenge for some people.
Yeah.
Especially depending on what their expectation was for the midpoint in body. Sometimes those voices can get a little bit louder.
Well, the book Atomic Habits that we read when we did this initially, James Clear talks about how identity shapes behavior. And you quite literally have to become the type of person that can face down these challenges and stick to your commitments. So the question that you need to ask yourself constantly is, how do I become this person? And the answer to it is by showing up and doing what's required over and over and over and over again. And when you make a mistake, you're kind and you're compassionate with yourself, but you don't let yourself off the hook and blame it on things that are outside of your control. You reflect on the things that you could do better. You create a habit and a strategy for that, and then you get back to work. And you do that enough over time, you become the type of person who can stick to a diet plan regardless of what time of the year it is. You become the type of person that shows up for workouts even when life is chaotic. You become the type of person that I would suggest in the deepest parts of your heart you truly want to be anyway. Mm-hmm. We all want to be the type of people that honor our own commitments to ourselves and show up as the best version of ourselves. Life has a way of knocking you around and teaching you that that standard is somehow not possible. And that's simply not true. Mm-hmm. So I would also suggest, if you want a mental edge, I want you to think about people in your life who exhibit the ability to do the things that I just talked about. They are out there. Even if they're not close in your circle, right? They're out there. And I want you to think again about like what you would tell your kid. If somebody else is capable of doing it, so are you. That is advice that I give my child all the time. You just have to be clear on what's required to make it happen, and you have to be willing to show up and do those things. Mm-hmm. So if you can become that type of person, over time, this stuff just sticks. Yeah. And you definitely need tune-ups here and there. We all do. Mm-hmm. But it becomes just more of your standard operating procedure. This is how I do life.
Yeah. I mean, I always think of it kind of as building a new skill. Because like when you're building a new skill or trying to learn something new, like very few times do you get it perfect the right time or very quickly. Usually, depending on the specific thing you're trying to get better at or whatever, like it could take a week, it could take a month, it could take a year. And I think what you said, just being clear on what the path is and what you have to do to get there, I think is something you just got to constantly remind yourself of.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I think that is a really good point. It made me think of something in my own life that I'm struggling with that I had to face, and I'm going to share it. I've struggled with like severe ADHD my whole life, so much so that I didn't even want to identify with it. I would run from that definition at every point I could. But as I started to learn more about what it was and how it shows up in my life, one of the things that's been consistent my whole life is my inability to like organize a space. I have 100 books around me all the time, and I can read, 10 books at a clip and keep that organized in my mind. But keeping my desk organized, it's impossible. I collect things, and that has become true to me, okay? It's as true to me as somebody listening to this goes, I just can't cook. I just can't meal prep, okay? Well, here recently, we've reached a point where the office that I use at the gym, for example, I just don't think should be the place where I keep my stuff. We want to use it for more of sales processes. I have another office, which is where me and Tate are right now shooting this podcast. But I knew that if I kept going, I got to organize this. It was not going to happen. Mm-hmm. So what did I do? I bought my way out of this problem. I got on Google after talking to one of my coaches. Okay, and to be clear, I have coaches. I have business coaches. I have mindset coaches. I have somebody that designs my own programs for me, and you can talk to people in this industry. I write really good programs, but I value other people's expertise, so I hire them for that. Well, one of my coaches made this suggestion of hiring an organization company. I didn't even know they existed. So I got on the Google, I found this company, and I've paid them now hundreds of dollars to come over and organize my office. Yes. And it's getting there. And it's gone so well, they're going to come over here and help us organize this space.
And if anyone's been in the gym for a while, you've probably noticed
you're
some
probably
differences
noticing
here
it,
lately.
right?
And again, like that's us. Like we work a lot, and it's just all right. When are we going to get this done? Do we have the capability of doing this? And like you said, like buying your time back and getting that done for someone else. Kind of same with the food.
Yeah, well, this is where I'm going.
Yeah,
That's exactly where I was going. It's like, so I bought my way out of this problem, okay? The same way, if you're the person that is like, I just can't cook, if you really can't do it, if that story is so deeply ingrained into you, the way it is into me that I can't organize my desk, there's still a solution. You might have to buy your way out of it and hire somebody to do your meals for you or order meals from some company. But that is a solvable problem. But when you act like it's not, like, oh, this is just the doom of my life. I can never organize my desk or I can never figure out how to cook. What I want you to understand is that works for you. Mm-hmm. That story works for you because it keeps you from having to do something else and something different. Yeah. So be careful of the stories that you tell yourself and understand that you can buy your way out of problems or create unique solutions to the things you struggle with. But if you believe you can't change, you won't.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so there was one or two questions that got posted that I wanted to hit on real quick before we call this thing quits for the day.
All right.
So one, Tasha asked, I know Maddie basically built out this meal plan to where like you follow it, you're getting everything you want.
Yep.
But we have had some questions about, should I still be tracking my food through an app? What type of app should I use and everything like that? What would you lean into with that one for them?
It's up to you. So because Maddie's done such a good job of already doing the macros and calories for you, you can assume that if you just eat and you don't worry about it, you're going to be just fine. However, if you are one of these people that sees the value in learning how to track, this is a great time to do it because you're eating almost the same things every day. So if I was going to track right now, I would do what we call macro planning versus macro tracking. A lot of people get themselves in trouble with macro tracking. It's like they eat or they go, okay, I'm hungry. What am I going to eat? And then they weigh it out and then they eat it. That makes this process very stressful. And that's why I think most people fail at weighing, measuring, and tracking. But if the night before you go, okay, this is what I'm eating tomorrow, this is the time, and you load that into your app, well, one, you are planning out what you're going to eat that day, and you're keeping track of your calories and macros. So I think it's a great habit to install. And here's the thing. If you do that, at the end of this challenge, you've got real data that will help you moving forward. And that's something myself and Maddie can certainly help you with.
Yeah. So especially like if you're doing that kind of stuff, like continuing after the challenge, this gives us, because again, you can't eat 15,000 calories indefinitely.
No,
and again, we'll get into that a little bit more later on, and if you're going to be at the fat loss forever as well. So, aside from that, we're on the downward slope of the challenge. All right, only a couple weeks left to go. So, when in doubt, ask questions. All right, ask questions and lean into some of the stuff we talked about. You got anything left that you want to touch on right before we close out?
Yeah, go harder. This isn't the time to decide that you've done enough. This isn't the time to slow down. What my hope for you is that you can learn to overwhelm yourself with evidence that you are capable of change. And the way that you will do that is by doubling down the rest of this challenge. Don't slow down. Double down.
I dig that. That being said, we'll catch you in the gym on Monday. Peace.
Later.